wind howls through the snow-laden pines of Crater Lake National Park, its eerie song a warning I should have heeded. But after 15 years as a park ranger, I thought I'd seen it all. I'm Alex Reeves, 35 years old, and I'm about to discover how wrong I was. I trudged through knee-deep snow, checking my GPS. This area of the park is rarely visited, even in peak season. Now, with a storm brewing, it's downright desolate. As I eye the darkening sky, a chill runs down my spine that has nothing to do with the cold. Fuck, I mutter, fumbling for my radio. Base, this is Reeves. I'm cutting my patrol short. That blizzard's... Static crackles, drowning out my words. I frown, tapping the device. Nothing but white noise. The first flurries begin to fall, quickly intensifying into a whiteout. I can barely see my hand in front of my face. Survival instincts kick in. I need shelter, fast. I stumble blindly through the worsening storm, my gloved hand suddenly striking wood. Blinking away snow, I find myself face to face with a dilapidated cabin. It's a miracle, but something feels off. In all my years patrolling this area, I've never seen this structure before. No time to question it now. The wind shrieks, driving icy needles into any exposed skin. I shoulder the door open and stumble inside. The cabin's interior is dark, musty, and bitterly cold. As my eyes adjust, I freeze. I'm not alone. Huddled in the corners are people, if you can call them that. They're emaciated to the point of being skeletal, their skin pallid and stretched tight over protruding bones. Wild, matted hair hangs in tangles, and their eyes, God, their eyes gleam with an unsettling intelligence that belies their feral appearance. Jesus Christ, I breathe, instinctively reaching for my sidearm. One of the figures raises a trembling hand. Please, it croaks, the voice dry and cracked from disuse. We mean no harm. We need help. My training kicks in, overriding my initial shock. These people, whoever they are, clearly need medical attention. I'm Ranger Reeves, I say slowly, keeping my voice calm and even. Can you tell me what happened? How long have you been out here? A ripple seems to pass through the group. They exchange glances, a silent communication passing between them. Finally, one of them, a woman, I think, though it's hard to tell, speaks up. We are descendants, she says haltingly. Our grandparents. They came here to hike, decades ago. Got lost. Never found their way out. My brow furrows. That doesn't make sense. Even in the most remote areas of the park, search and rescue operations are thorough. How could a group of hikers have remained undiscovered for generations? We've tried to leave, another voice rasps, but the woods, they change. Paths that should lead out just bring us back here, always back here. As the storm rages outside, I try to radio for help again. Nothing but static. I'm stuck here, at least until the blizzard passes. The hours crawl by. I share what supplies I have, but the cabin's occupants barely touch the food. Instead, they seem to be constantly sniffing the air, their heads cocked, as if listening to something just beyond human hearing. As night falls, my unease grows. The walls are covered in deep scratches, some of which look disturbingly fresh. In one corner, barely hidden by shadow, lies a pile of what looks unsettlingly like gnawed bones. Sleeping is out of the question. I keep watch, my hand never far from my weapon. In the small hours of the morning, I catch snippets of whispered conversation. The new arrival. Been so long since we fed. Soon, brothers and sisters. A chill that has nothing to do with the temperature runs down my spine. Something is very, very wrong here. Dawn breaks, but the storm shows no signs of abating. My radio remains stubbornly silent. Deciding to brave the weather, I head for the door. only to find myself somehow turned around, facing the back of the cabin instead. Confusion gives way to frustration, then to fear as every attempt to leave ends the same way. It's as if the cabin itself is shifting around me, keeping me trapped inside. Days blur together. My strength begins to wane, my mind clouding. Vivid hallucinations plague me, twisted visions of endless woods and ravenous shadows. I see myself running through the forest, hunting. No, that can't be right. I'm the park ranger, not some feral creature stalking prey. In a moment of lucidity, I notice a barely visible seam in the floorboards, a hidden cellar. With trembling hands, I pry it open. The stench that wafts up nearly makes me vomit. Steeling myself, I descend. The beam of my flashlight reveals a horror beyond imagining. Piled in one corner are park ranger uniforms and equipment, some so old they're rotting away. And the walls. The walls are covered in tally marks, hundreds upon hundreds of them, stretching back decades. Bile rises in my throat as the terrible truth dawns. These aren't descendants of lost hikers. They're the hikers themselves, kept alive through some ungodly means all these years. And the tally marks, each one represents a victim, a lost hiker, a park ranger who came too close to their lair. Panic seizes me. I have to get out, have to warn someone. I scramble up the ladder, only to find the cabin's occupants waiting. Their emaciated faces split into hungry grins, teeth too sharp, too numerous. "Welcome home, sibling," they say in unison, their voices a discordant chorus. "We've waited so long for you to remember." I back away, shaking my head in denial. No, I'm not one of you. I'm Ranger Reeves. I was just on patrol. My words die as I catch sight of my reflection in a grimy window. The face that stares back is gaunt, feral, with wild eyes and matted hair. I look down at my hands, seeing not the sturdy gloves of a park ranger, but gnarled, claw-like fingers. Memories come flooding back, shattering the illusion my fractured psyche had created. The patrol was a hunt for fresh meat. The new arrival I'd overheard about wasn't some hapless victim. It was my own true self, finally breaking through years of collective delusion. I fall to my knees, a scream of anguish rising in my throat. But what comes out is not human. It's the howl of a predator, joining the chorus of my kin as they celebrate the return of one of their own. Outside, the blizzard rages on, masking the inhuman sounds from within the cabin. And somewhere in the vast expanse of Crater Lake National Park, another unsuspecting hiker stumbles upon a cabin that isn't on any map, desperate for shelter from the storm. The cycle begins anew. For that is the way of the starved ones, forever hungry, forever waiting in our hidden cabin for the next meal to wander into our grasp. I am Alex Reeves, and I am one of the starved ones. May God have mercy on those who cross our path.
The scent of pine needles and damp earth fills my nostrils as I stare at my reflection in the cracked mirror of the camp bathroom. Dark circles ring my eyes, a testament to another sleepless night. I splash cold water on my face, trying to wash away the remnants of my recurring nightmare. But I know it's useless. The memories of that day at Crater Lake Summer Camp are etched into my brain forever. I'm Sarah Collins, 22 years old, and I haven't had a good night's sleep in 4 years. Not since Tommy Berkshire vanished on my watch. It was supposed to be an easy summer job. Good pay, fresh air, and a chance to pad my college application. But as I dry my face with a scratchy paper towel, I can't help but wonder, was it worth the cost to my sanity? The last week of camp. That's when it all went to hell. I close my eyes, and I'm back there, surrounded by chattering kids on the evening nature walk. The sun is setting, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and reds. It's beautiful, but there's an undercurrent of unease I can't shake. I do a head count for the 10th time. 14 kids, just like there should be. But as we round a bend in the trail, that number drops to 13. I spin around, my heart racing. "Tommy," I call out, trying to keep the panic from my voice. "Tommy Berkshire?" No answer, just the rustling of leaves and the fading calls of birds settling in for the night. The next few hours are a blur of flashlights, shouting voices, and growing dread. By midnight, the park rangers arrive with dogs and more volunteers. I watch the search parties fan out, their flashlight beams cutting through the darkness like desperate, probing fingers. I should have been watching more closely. I should have noticed sooner. The guilt gnaws at me, a ravenous thing that threatens to consume me whole. As dawn breaks, casting long shadows through the mist-shrouded forest, I make a decision. I approach the head counselor, my voice hoarse from hours of calling Tommy's name. "I'm going to check the caves," I tell her, "the ones we visited earlier this week. Tommy seemed fascinated by them." She nods, too exhausted to argue. "Take a radio," she says. "And Sarah, be careful." The hike to the caves is 2 miles of self-recrimination and growing unease. The morning mist clings to everything, turning familiar shapes into looming monsters. Every snapping twig makes me flinch. I try to stay positive, to imagine finding Tommy curled up and scared but safe. The alternative is too horrible to contemplate. I'm about halfway there when I hear it, a child's laughter echoing through the trees. My heart leaps into my throat. "Tommy?" I call out, my eyes scanning the misty woods. The laughter comes again, further ahead this time. I break into a run, hope and fear warring in my chest. "Tommy, it's me, Counselor Sarah. Where are you?" The laughter leads me off the trail, deeper into the untamed wilderness. I stumble over roots and crash through underbrush, the sound always just ahead, always just out of sight. Branches whip at my face, leaving stinging scratches, but I barely notice. Suddenly, I burst into a small clearing and skid to a halt. There, in the center, stands Tommy. Relief floods through me for a split second before my instincts start screaming that something is very, very wrong. Tommy stands perfectly still, his back to me. He's wearing the same red t-shirt and blue shorts he had on when he disappeared, but they're pristine. Too clean for a kid who spent the night in the woods. There's an unnatural stillness to him, like a photograph come to life. "Tommy," I say softly, taking a hesitant step forward. "Are you okay? We've been so worried." Slowly, so slowly, Tommy turns around. I feel the scream building in my throat before I even fully process what I'm seeing. His face is wrong. The features are Tommy's, but they're subtly distorted, like a wax figure left out in the sun. His skin is too smooth, too pallid. And his eyes, oh God, his eyes are completely black, 2 bottomless pits in his small face. I stumble backward, my mind reeling. This can't be real. This can't be happening. As I watch in horror, Tommy's mouth opens, far wider than any human mouth should, stretching until it seems his face will split in 2. That childish laughter pours out again, but it's not coming from Tommy. It seems to be coming from everywhere, from the trees themselves. I run. I run faster than I've ever run in my life, branches whipping my face, roots threatening to trip me at every step. The laughter follows, growing louder and more distorted. I can hear footsteps behind me, too light and quick to be human. Something snags my ankle and I go down hard, the breath knocked from my lungs. I roll over, gasping, to see Tommy standing over me. But it's not Tommy anymore. His body is elongating, limbs stretching and twisting like taffy. His skin ripples and bulges as if something is moving beneath it. I scramble backward, leaves and dirt filling my mouth as I try to scream. The thing that was Tommy lurches toward me, its face melting and reforming with every step. In its depths, I see flashes of other faces, adults, children, all wearing the same expression of twisted glee. My back hits a tree, and I realize with dawning horror that I'm trapped. The Tommy thing reaches for me with fingers that are too long, too jointed. Its touch is ice cold and sends jolts of agony through my body. I squeeze my eyes shut, certain that this is the end. But when I open them again, I'm lying on the forest floor, alone. The clearing is empty, no sign of Tommy or the monstrous thing he became. Did I imagine it all? I don't know how I found my way back to the camp. By the time I burst out of the woods, I was a hysterical mess. I babbled about Tommy and black eyes and impossible laughter, but of course no one believed me. They found Tommy 3 days later, curled up in one of the caves, dehydrated and scared, but otherwise unharmed. He had no memory of what had happened to him. I couldn't bear to look at him, couldn't shake the memory of what I'd seen in those woods. I quit that day, packed my bags, and left without saying goodbye to anyone. I couldn't stay there, not with the weight of what I'd experienced, real or imagined, pressing down on me. To this day, I don't know what happened in the deep woods of Crater Lake National Park. Was it all a stress-induced hallucination? Some kind of waking nightmare brought on by guilt and lack of sleep? Or did I glimpse something that wasn't meant for human eyes? All I know is that I'll never go back to those woods. And whenever I hear a child laugh, I can't help but shudder, remembering that eerie sound echoing through the misty trees of Crater Lake. Sometimes, in my darkest moments, I find myself examining my own reflection, searching for signs that I'm changing, stretching, becoming something other than human. Because deep down, I fear that whatever I encountered in those woods didn't let me go. It's just biding its time, waiting to finish what it started on that misty morning 4 years ago. And the most terrifying thought of all? Part of me is looking forward to it so I can finally end this waking nightmare.
I've always been a rational person. I don't believe in ghosts, demons, or things that go bump in the night. But what happened last summer at Crater Lake, it shook me to my core. It made me question everything I thought I knew about reality, about time, about the thin veil between this world and whatever lies beyond. I'm Tyler, and I thought a buddy trip to nurse our wounds in the woods was just what the doctor ordered. My best friend Jake and I, both battered by life's recent cruelties, decided to spend a week camping in the wilderness. For me, it was an escape from the echoing silence of an empty house, the ghost of my failed marriage haunting every room. For Jake, it was a chance to forget the humiliation of being escorted out of his office, a cardboard box of personal effects in his arms, a security guard at his heels. We chose Crater Lake for its beauty, its isolation. We thought the serene landscapes would soothe our troubled minds. We were fools. The first 2 days were uneventful. We hiked, fished, sat around the campfire trading stories and passing a bottle of whiskey back and forth. On the surface, it was exactly what we needed. But there was an undercurrent of unease, a tension neither of us wanted to acknowledge. Maybe it was the way the trees seemed to loom over us, their branches reaching out like gnarled fingers, or the unnatural silence that fell over the forest at night, as if every living creature was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. On the third day, everything changed. The storm came out of nowhere, the sky darkening so quickly it was as if someone had flipped a switch. The rain came down in sheets, driven by howling winds that threatened to tear our tent from the ground. Lightning split the sky, followed by thunder so loud it made my teeth rattle. "Ty, we can't stay here!" Jake shouted over the storm's fury. "The tent's not going to hold." I nodded, already stuffing our most important gear into our packs. That's when Jake grabbed my shoulder, his eyes wide. "Look," he yelled, pointing through a gap in the trees. At first, I couldn't see anything through the curtain of rain. Then, for a split second, a flash of lightning illuminated the landscape. And there it was, a cabin, maybe a quarter-mile away, a warm light glowing in its window. We didn't stop to think about how odd it was to find a cabin so deep in the woods, miles from any marked trails or roads. We just ran, stumbling through the underbrush, branches whipping our faces as we fought against the wind and rain. As we drew closer, I could make out more details. The cabin was old but solid-looking, built of rough-hewn logs with a steep, slanted roof. An oil lantern hung by the door, casting a warm, inviting glow. It looked like salvation. Jake reached the door first, pounding on it with his fist. "Hello?" he called out. "Is anyone there? We need help." No answer came. Jake tried the doorknob, and, to our surprise, it turned easily. We exchanged a glance, both of us hesitating for a moment. But another clap of thunder made the decision for us. We stepped inside, out of the storm's fury. The interior of the cabin was cozy, if a bit outdated. A fire burned low in a stone hearth, casting flickering shadows on the walls. The air was heavy with the scent of wood smoke and something else. Something musty and vaguely unpleasant, like old meat left too long in the sun. "Hello?" I called out, my voice sounding oddly muffled in the still air of the cabin. "We're sorry to bother you." The storm. My voice trailed off as I took in more details of our surroundings. The table was set for dinner, 4 place settings laid out with care. Steam rose from a tureen in the center of the table. It was as if the occupants had just stepped away for a moment, intending to return at any second. "This is weird," Jake muttered, echoing my thoughts. "Where is everyone?" I shrugged, trying to ignore the growing sense of unease in the pit of my stomach. Maybe they went to check on something outside when the storm hit. Got stuck somewhere. Jake nodded, but he didn't look convinced. He moved towards a closed door, presumably leading to a bedroom. "I'm going to see if I can find some dry clothes. You should too before we both catch pneumonia." As Jake disappeared into the other room, I found myself drawn to the mantelpiece. A row of framed photographs stood there, a family smiling out at the world. Mother, father, 2 children, a boy and a girl. They looked happy, wholesome, all American. But something was wrong with the photos. I leaned in closer, my blood running cold as I realized what I was seeing. The faces in every picture were blurred, as if someone had taken their thumb and smeared the images while the ink was still wet. I could make out vague features, the curve of a cheek, the suggestion of eyes, but no clear details. "Jake," I called out, my voice shaking more than I want to admit. "Jake, you need to see this." No answer came from the bedroom. The silence in the cabin suddenly felt oppressive, menacing. I became acutely aware of the sound of my own breathing, too loud in the quiet. "Jake?" I tried again, taking a step towards the bedroom door. That's when I heard it, a strange muffled sound coming from behind me. I whirled around, my heart pounding in my chest. The photographs on the mantel were changing. As I watched, the blurred faces began to shift and flow like wax melting under an intense heat. The smiles twisted, stretching impossibly wide, turning into leering grins full of 2 sharp teeth. The eyes, once indistinct smudges, snapped into focus. They were entirely black, bottomless pits that seemed to stare directly into my soul. I stumbled backward. A shout lodged in my throat. My back hit something solid. The bedroom door, it opened under my weight, and I fell backward into the room. "Jake!" I gasped, scrambling to my feet. "We need to go now." But Jake didn't answer. He stood with his back to me, perfectly still, staring at something on the bed. As I approached, I could see he was holding a newspaper in his trembling hands. "Jake," I said, reaching out to touch his shoulder. He turned to me slowly, his face pale as death. Without a word, he held out the newspaper. The date at the top made my head spin. It was from exactly 50 years ago, to the day. The headline screamed in bold type, "Family of 4 missing in Crater Lake National Park. Foul play suspected." Beneath the headline was a photo. The same family from the pictures on the mantle, their faces clear and normal. The article spoke of a mysterious disappearance, a cabin found abandoned, meals still warm on the table. "This isn't possible," I whispered, my mind reeling. "This can't be real." That's when we heard it, the sound of footsteps on the porch, heavy, dragging footsteps, punctuated by a wet, squelching sound. Something was out there, something that had no right to be walking, to be existing at all. We didn't need to exchange words. As one, we moved towards the back door, our survival instincts screaming at us to run, to get as far away from this place as possible. As we burst out into the storm, I caught a glimpse of something entering the cabin through the front door. Something large, misshapen, glistening wet in the lamplight. Something that might have once been human, but wasn't anymore. Its head turned towards us, and I saw its face, or what was left of it. The features were blurred, shifting, just like in the photographs. But the eyes were clear, black, empty, and hungry. We ran until our lungs burned and our legs felt like jelly. We ran through the night, through the storm, not daring to stop, until the first light of dawn broke through the trees and we stumbled into a ranger station. The ranger listened to our wild tale with a mixture of concern and skepticism, obviously wondering what we had been consuming late at night in our tents. When we described the location of the cabin, he shook his head slowly. "There are no cabins in that part of the woods," he said. "There was one, decades ago. A family disappeared there in the 70s. The cabin burned down shortly after. Nothing's been built there since." I wanted to argue, to insist that what we'd seen was real. But one look at Jake's face told me he was thinking the same thing I was. Who would believe us? We thanked the ranger and left, our minds still struggling to process what had happened. In the years since that night, I've tried to rationalize what we experienced. Was it some kind of shared hallucination, brought on by stress and the intensity of the storm? A bizarre time slip, or something darker, something that defies explanation? I've never gone camping again. Jake and I don't talk much anymore. I think we both prefer to pretend that night never happened. But sometimes, when the rain is pouring down and the wind is howling outside my window, I swear I can smell that musty odor from the cabin. And in my nightmares, I hear those heavy, dragging footsteps. Coming closer, always closer. And I wonder, did we really escape that night? Or is something out there, waiting, biding its time until it can finish what it started all those years ago at Crater Lake?